Hey guys, Tim Dorian here for my case study from EDL 853. Get this child out of my room. Um, what we have is a rural district who has a superintendent, and then they travel around one day each week to the different buildings. Um, at each building, there is a teacher, assistant, superintendent, kind of principal ish role that one person takes on. And at this one specific building that we're looking at, there is an issue between a teacher and a student. So the teacher comes in and says, you got to get this kid out of my room. He's becoming a disruption. He's having severe behavior issues, and he's making things unsafe. So he's throwing books. He threw a pencil at her, and he's been throwing rocks off the bus, and this kid's really struggling. Now, this student has been diagnosed with a behavior disorder, as well as a couple other siblings that are in the district. So this is not something that is uncommon with this family. And the whole process of this, kid's already on an IEP and everything, and the whole process that we're going through with this case study is kind of how to rectify this situation, how to set it up so that the kid can be successful, and that the parents, we can get them some support, as well as the teacher, and being sure, or being able to make sure that they can teach and control their classroom. So what do we know? We have a lack of services. We have a frustrated teacher. We have unsupported parents. That part comes from the IEP meeting that's already occurred, where especially the father was very kind of distant from the whole experience. Just said, give me the papers, I'll sign them, do whatever you want to do. They're kind of at their wits' end, and they don't really know what to do next. Is kind of our issue there. The violent outburst by the student, which I've already discussed, whether he was throwing the pencils, throwing the rocks off the bus. There's a laundry list every day that this kid's teacher's coming in at the end of the day with. And then we have the lack of an intervention plan. There's a plan for, here's what happens after the fact. Here's what happens once this pencil's been thrown, once this aggressive behavior is coming out. But there's nothing to put in place before those things occur. As far as what do we need to know? We need to know about the previous interventions. We need to know what has their plan been up until this point. It can't just be that removal is the end all be all. There's got to be steps that go into it. The current behavior plan, it says it's a reward system, doesn't tell us what those rewards are, doesn't tell us what those punishments also might be that are associated with it. During the IEP process, the mother mentions that the brother is on Ritalin, talks about, should she start kind of medicating her son? And that's not our part to decide. But we do need to know if he is on medication, or should he be on medication? Has he been kind of evaluated for that? Also, what impact, or excuse me, not impact, but what input have we had from the student? Has there been any from the student, or is it all coming from the father that just wants to sign the papers and the mother that wants to put him on medicine? So we need to know how much has the student been involved in this process. So in all, our problem here is we have a violent student who is disrupting the classroom as well as threatening the teacher. So far, it has not been directed at any other students, but we kind of have to plan on that being a possibility, at least in the future. We have unsupported parents, as well as just a lack of resources. We have a lack of resources at the school level. We have a lack of resources at the community level to assist these parents. So for my plan of action here, it's kind of already been started a little bit throughout the case study, where we've already incorporated the removal of the child to the resource room as needed, and it is kind of listed in there as a last resort. It is not a long-term option. It is take the kid out, get the kid to cool down, bring them back in. At least that's how I interpreted how they were putting it into the IEP. So first of all, the student's going to remain mainstreamed. There's no resources, there's no testing or anything that has shown that this kid needs to be separated from the rest of the students. It mentions that he's a bright kid and academically very, very much not necessary to remove him full time or anything like that. So he is going to be staying in the classroom. The triggers. The principal goes in, the principal hybrid superintendent thing. She goes in and talks about that she observed the class and that his outbursts seem to come out of nowhere and they don't really know what's going on there. And then when they ask the kid, he just kind of puts his head down and shuffles his feet and says, I don't know why I did it. So we need to figure out what those triggers are. It mentions that he gets upset, quit looking at me, yelling at the other kids. It could be as simple as, hey, do you want to sit in the back of the room where nobody can see you? Do you want to have a desk, back in the corner? And if it could be that simple, that's a very easy, takes 10 seconds, not even, to get that to happen. But we need to talk to that kid. We need to identify those triggers. And that kid needs to identify where his safe space is going to be, who is going to be taking him to that resource room, and try to get that kid to develop some good, healthy relationships with adults in the building that he feels safe and that he feels he can go to help cool down. If you send this kid, if we send him to somebody that he absolutely cannot stand, and then that's who he's supposed to calm down with, it's not going to happen. So we need to make sure that the student has a voice in this, in this whole process of identifying where he's going to be safe at, who he feels comfortable with, and who he thinks is going to help him the most. Also, and I already talked about it a little bit, but these steps for de-escalation, that the teacher, even though she's perceived to be a good teacher, she's been teaching for a decade and everything else, that's great. But she also needs to develop her skills in de-escalation. She needs to realize that when this kid, if he's just putting his head down and he's or fidgeting at his desk and not doing his work or whatever, she needs to be able to identify those triggers for him, or those steps where he's building up, so that she can come over and help to de-escalate the situation before it evolves into throwing books and throwing pencils and screaming and hollering and everything else. So the removal needs to be a last resort. This whole process needs to be ended before it even begins. So we really need to work with the teacher to help to identify those different triggers for him, as well as kind of how he builds up to those end points. And then in terms of the parents, we need to provide at least a list of resources to them, whether it's financial planning services, whether it's trying to get on different assistant programs for mom, SNAP or things like that, that can help to alleviate some of those financial burdens. I would also suggest go to some type of counseling, because if you have multiple children who are having these behavior disorders, I can only imagine the toll that would take on someone. So just to provide those resources, even if it's, hey, if you want to come in and maybe talk to the school counselor on Wednesday afternoons for 30 minutes or something, just to help build that parent-school relationship and hopefully help out this kid's home life, could do nothing but help to benefit him once he's at school. So promoting the success of all students. We're going to increase that support and that stability at home. We're going to make sure that those, or not make sure, but at least attempt to help increase that support from the parents, from both mom and dad, to help this kid to be successful. We're going to keep him in the least restrictive environment, and we're not going to take him out and stick him behind the woodshed and, hey, that's where you got to stay with a book all day. And it even mentions that that's kind of the old style was, disruptive kids. We took them to ISS essentially and threw a book at them and told them to stay there for the day. That's not this kid's issue. This kid, it's a manifestation of his disability. So we really need to make sure that we are doing what we can to help him out. But that being said, this student is not going to be allowed to prevent other students from learning. If you have a kid, running around throwing books and throwing pencils and everything else, it's not good for the rest of the class when you're spending a large chunk of your day dealing with the behaviors of that one specific student, and it's kind of bringing everybody else down. So when we help out this kid, we're going to help out the whole class. But if that's not able to happen that day, or for that 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever that kid needs, we are going to remove him from the situation so that he can come back later and be successful while not preventing others at the same time. And we're going to promote a safe school. School safety is always going to be first priority. We just can't have violence in the building. That's something that's unacceptable. So my thoughts and feelings: people need help. The kid needs help. Teacher needs help. Parents need help. It's something that we're going to do our best to provide. And we do have that lack of resources because we're in that small rural district and everything else. So we're going to do what we can. But we're really going to try. We're really going to try and help these people out. Or at least on my end, I'm going to try to help these people out. I'm going to keep him mainstream. He's going to be in least restrictive environment because academically, kid's on point. That should be it shouldn't even be an issue of, is he going to be removed all time or full time? Excuse me. Again, safety is number one priority. Got to have safe schools. Got to have safe classrooms. And we're going to protect the student's ability to learn, not just this student who is in question, but the class as a whole. Assuming that there's 20 kids in the class, you have 19 other kids who are trying to learn while this chaos is going on around them. And we're going to protect everybody's ability to learn. So my plan, it promotes the academic success by eliminating these triggers. Again, like if it's just that the kid needs to be moved, wants to sit at the back of the room, fantastic. That's an easy thing to do. We're going to eliminate those triggers. We're going to identify those triggers also. And we're going to increase the support from home, talking with mom and dad, building those relationships with the teacher, the parent, as well as the administrator. And then we're going to place a student in the location where all students can be successful. If he needs to be taken out for a minute, that's fine. But once he comes back in, he's going to be a participant in the class and hopefully contribute to those classroom conversations, build relationships with his peers, and really help the rest of the class to elevate. How does it promote the personal well-being? So for this kid, we're obviously focusing on this kid. So it helps stabilize his home life, helps stabilize the classroom, not just for the student, but for the whole class as well as the teacher, by giving those different interventions, different supports as they are needed. And then, ensures that kids in the least restrictive environment. Also includes input from the teacher, from the parent, and most importantly, I believe, from the student in having him identify those safe people, safe places that he can go to really help him calm down. So the instructional capacity, how did I help to increase this, was I'm keeping those kids in the classroom. Whether it's conversations, whether it's just working on a project together, it always helps to keep that kid in the classroom. Doesn't help just them, helps all their peers around them. If you took us all and you spread us out all over the world, we had no collaboration between each other, there's very little that we would accomplish. But when you take a bunch of people, you throw them together, many hands make light work, and the same is true for learning and for education. So we're going to keep all those kids in the classroom where they need to be. But with that, we're going to provide supports and strategies for the teacher so that they can help to drive that development, that education, that learning that's going on in their classroom, so that all the kids can be successful. And then lastly, I'm huge on relationships. That's kind of my thing that I hang my hat on. And we're going to develop those relationships between all the stakeholders. We're going between the teacher, principal, superintendent, assistant superintendent, and her peers as other teachers, the parents, bringing the parents in, bringing the student in, and even if they identify their safe person as the janitor, cool, that's awesome. I've been in schools with that where that happens, and everybody in the building is there for the support and development of our kids. So having all those people involved in this process, having that kid know that he can wave to Mr. Johnson in the morning when the janitors open up the building or whatever the case may be, and just having those people within our building and within our students' lives, it's going to do nothing but help make them to be successful. So there is my case study. Thank you guys for watching it to the end here. Hopefully you agree with my plan here. And again, thanks for watching.